Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank. Guess what? Ted has a guest on the phone with us, and we're going to get to that in just a second. Ted, I'm really excited because we are talking today about Nevis, and I'm anxious to hear more about it. But why don't you introduce your guest, please?
Yeah, so we're going to spend a little time today talking about one of my favorite islands in the Caribbean, and that is the island of Nevis. And so we have a guest with us today. His name is Greg Phillip, and Greg is the CEO of Nevis Sun Tours, which is a company that operates tours on the island of Nevis, and he is the former CEO of the Nevis Tourism Authority. So he knows everything about that island like the back of his hand. So Greg, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Ted. I'm happy to be here.
So, Greg, tell us a little bit about your wonderful island. I don't know too much about it. How big is it? And just give us some fun facts about it.
Wow. Well, the island of Nevis is 36 square miles, and that's very small. The road that goes around it is just about 19 and a half miles, but I promise you, it doesn't feel that small when you're here. Well, at least not for me. We're actually part of the country that is Saint Kitts and Nevis. Saint Kitts is the larger island of the two. Saint Kitts is about 68 square miles. And they have about 3 times the population of Nevis. Nevis has just about 13,000 people. But what's really great about it, and even though we're talking about Nevis today primarily, what's really great about it is that once you come here, you recognize that, in fact, what you've actually gotten is 2 islands on one Caribbean vacation, because there's only 2 miles of water separating the 2 islands. So going back and forth between the two takes all of about 5 or 6 minutes on a water taxi.
Yeah, it's a very easy to get between the islands. And Greg, tell us a little bit about that big mountain that sits in the center of the island.
Yeah, that's Nevis Peak, and it's really something to behold. You know, it sits in the middle of Nevis, but it has a different view no matter from which perspective you see it. It's always in view as you drive around the entire island, because, as I say, it's smack in the middle of the island. But what's great about it too is that, you know, there's always, well, most of the time, there's a cap of clouds above it, covering the top of it. So people would come here on vacation and absolutely never see the top of the mountain. And so on the days when there's no cloud cover on it, those are the days when, you know, it's a special day. It's usually going to be very, very sunny, and it's also going to be a day filled with great views of the mountain.
And how tall is this mountain, Greg?
It's 3,232 feet.
Oh.
So tall for a small island.
Yeah, so imagine this small little island with a big volcano right in the middle of it. But we shouldn't leave people with the impression that there isn't an important feature of this island called beaches, right? And you have some beautiful beaches on the island of Nevis.
Yes, we do. And you know, while our beaches are very beautiful, one of the things I love to tell people is that, look, you come here, you'll see our beautiful beaches, but while you think that you have just found a beautiful beach, one of the things that you recognize very swiftly that you've also found is some seclusion, because our beaches are almost always empty. And I've had the experience with people being on the beach all day and wonder, well, if this beach is so beautiful, where is everybody? So, you know, Nevis is that sort of place. It's never crowded, and it's an exclusive island in that way because it's not crowded. I mean, all told, we have just over 300 actual hotel rooms by travel industry definition of a hotel room on the island of Nevis. Of course, there are other types of accommodation, but if we just measure from the hotel rooms that we have, you can see that even when we're full, we're not busy. So you can be on a beach, a beautiful beach, all day, and at the same time, absolutely never see another person.
And one of the things that I think really makes this island beautiful, and I had a chance to visit it, and Greg and his team took me on a really beautiful day trip around the island and got a chance to view some of the resorts and some of the attractions there. But everything is at a very, very human scale. And even the biggest resort is relatively small. It's actually 4 seasons, so it's a very, very nice resort. You know, first-class service, perfect for families. It's got a beautiful golf course, beautiful beach, great restaurants. But so many of the other accommodations are really smaller, more charming sort of almost inns or small boutique properties. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about some of the accommodation choices on the island?
Oh, yes, I'll be glad to, because in fact, Nevis Sun Tours, my company, we're not just a company which offers tours on the island. We're actually a tour operator, so that's why and how we actually work with TED, because we're licensed as a tour operator and are also contracted with some of the hotels to book accommodations. So TED already mentioned the Four Seasons. I'll tell you quickly a bit about that. The Four Seasons has 189 guest rooms, but in addition to that, they have some spectacular villas, and there are about 50 of them that they also rent. So if you have a family coming to Nevis and you want to stay in something that's where you're all under one roof rather than being in a few hotel rooms, it's a great place to be. So the Four Seasons is there, and yes, we mentioned that it is a Four Seasons, so yes, expect that 5-diamond level of service. But in addition to that, there's a few others that we actually work with. There's one called Paradise Beach. And Ted, I don't know if you had a chance to see Paradise Beach when you were here.
I didn't, but I would definitely check it out the next time. It looks lovely.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know you're coming back soon, Ted.
We'll have to tape a show from down there. I think Mo's game for that.
I wonder if I should come too.
Talk to Ted about that. I'm sure he'll be glad to have you. But so Paradise Beach Resort, I mean, it's really a cluster of 12 villas that sit on the beach, and they have 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and then there's also some which are right on the sand. We don't have overwater bungalows here in Nevis, and mainly because all of our beaches are public beaches, no matter where they are. We have no private beaches, so these are villas that are right on the sand, though. And these are 2-bedroom villas. And my absolute favorite feature about this property is that it is not only ultra luxurious. The other thing about it is that it's very private. And the great feature of the 2-bedroom beach villas that they have is that when you go in at night, even in the day, there's you don't need a no disturb sign. It's a push of a button, and your steps to your villa actually comes up. Whether someone wants to come in or not, there's no way that they can come in until you let them in.
Putting the moat up around your castle.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what it is. I love that about it. And we also work with Montpelier Plantation and Beach. And Montpelier Plantation Beach is really in the hills. And no, there's not a beach in the hills. But it's on the side of Nevis Peak, which is the same mountain that we spoke about earlier. And this one is also very special. And part of the reason why I think it's special is really because of what you get when you go there. They're all told there's just 18 rooms.
Oh, wow.
So I promise you the level of service that you get there. And you wake up the second day for breakfast and they know you. You know them, the guests who are there. I mean, you would have interacted. So it's one of those places that are very, very cozy and a place where you go and you really do feel special because of what it is.
It has one of the most interesting places you can have a quiet romantic dinner for 2 people as well.
Yeah.
So tell us about the windmill.
Yeah, it's an old sugar mill. It's about 300, well, it's over 300 years old now. But what they do in there is a dining service in the nights, and with that, it's essentially the maximum number of people that they'll let in. If you have a group, it's 23. Beyond that, most nights what you'll typically see is probably couples having a romantic dinner. And it's really a nice atmosphere, the candles are lit in there, and it's all the volcanic rock that it's made from that really have it standing for so long after hundreds of years. But it's really a nice place to behold when you're having a romantic dinner.
And Greg, I can't believe it. You reminded me a little bit about the history of Nevis, but I can't believe we made it this far into the show and we didn't tell everyone here who the famous figure in American history who was actually born in Nevis was.
Yes, that it's Alexander Hamilton.
Yes.
So Alexander Hamilton is born on the island of Nevis, and for us here on the island, we knew that forever. And
and we just figured it out like 5 years ago when that Broadway musical became.
Exactly, when the play came out. That's when everybody else sort of got wind of it. But But yeah, we always knew it. And, I remember as a teenager having a shirt. I remember a red T-shirt that said on the front of it, Alexander Hamilton and I are 100% Nevisians, which is what you call people from Nevis. So yeah, but Ted, it's interesting that you bring that up. I have to tell you something quickly about that though. So we have a tour, an island tour called the Alexander Hamilton Island Tour.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was inspired. It's actually, the inspiration for it really came from the play.
Oh.
So I saw the play twice. I saw it probably about a month or so after it opened on Broadway with the original cast. And generally, I don't like musicals, and I was in New York for work, and I had these tickets, and I wasn't going to go, and then I decided, okay, we'll go. And I thought I'll just have a good nap. There was absolutely no way that I can sleep. It was that great a play. And then when it opened in London, I saw it in London also. And that blew me away again for a few different reasons. I mean, and part of it was just looking at the different reactions that a New York audience had versus the reactions an audience in England had.
Oh, interesting.
That's a good point. Different sides of the war.
But with this play though, Ted, what was interesting for me, every time I left the play, one thing was on my mind: what happens when people come to Nevis looking for Alexander Hamilton?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, the answer for me was always that they'll go to the museum, and we have an Alexander Hamilton museum here. But you go there, you're going to spend, if you want to go through every single thing, you're really going to spend probably about an hour. And I always thought to myself, that is not enough.
No.
And you'll go to this museum, and I always envision people leaving the museum and say, that's it? So what we've done since we've been running Nevis on tours, we've done lots of research, and we've created this tour. And what the tour ultimately is yes, it is an island tour, because you'll see the entire island of Nevis, but you'll only go to historic sites that were here on the island when Alexander Hamilton was here. And Alexander Hamilton was born in 1757. So you're going to sites, many of them date back to the 1600s. But what's very special about it is all of these places are in fact places that are still in use up to today. It shows the depth of our history, but in addition to that, the tour is actually a story. And it boils down to this human interest story that is about Hamilton and some of the things that he was facing in his life, some of the conflicts, if you will, that he was facing in his life. And we go through this island tour, and you find, if you're participating on this tour, you find yourself in the middle of a scene.
Wow.
So there's some historic sites that we go to. If you've been to them before, you show up to them on this tour, and you realize that it's not the same.
I bet.
Yeah, because you're involved in it, and you're participating in this in your own way.
How old was Hamilton when he left Nevis?
Well, some say he was about 12. Other parts of history would say he's about 9. And that's the interesting thing, because there's some things here, some documents that you'll see that places his birth in 1755 and some in 1757. I mean, of course, back then, record keeping was a bit different.
Wasn't quite as good. Yeah. But that's a really good microcosm, I think, of one of the reasons I think Nevis is such an attractive destination. And the first thing is that all the resorts are, like I said, kind of that human-scaled resort. But the second thing is that it's not the kind of place where you're going to go to a resort, close the door, and never leave. There is so much fascinating history and heritage and culture and beautiful restaurants and hikes and things like that you can do on this island. And Greg's company has done a great job of curating sort of a collection of neat things that we can put together for you. So if you go to Nevis, you don't just get dropped at the door of the hotel and you're on your own for a week. We can put together a really nice, interesting program that appeals to a lot of different people, whether it's, families or Alexander Hamilton buffs.
Yeah.
Greg,
I was thinking maybe we should get the cast to come down and perform the show on the island.
Yeah, well, listen to this, that 3 months ago, Chris Jackson, he played George Washington in the play.
And he was there?
Yeah, he was here on Nevis, and the Four Seasons called me up and said, we have some people who want to do the tour. So I show up, and it's him. Yeah.
Well, that probably puts you on the spot. You had to be extra accurate.
How awesome was that, Greg?
No, it was great because, well, I mean, of course, I show up and I know it's him, and I'm not letting on that I know it's him. So I started by introducing the tour and saying that, I saw the play and all that when it was on Broadway, and he's like, "Oh, so you saw me?" I'm like, "Yeah." So, but the great thing is that he's on the tour, and I explained to him that some of it what we do, because it's history, we are accurate. But at the same time, there are certain conversations and certain things that Hamilton might have thought about that we have no clue, because they're not recorded in history. So we use a bit of historical fiction. And he's like, "Oh, that's okay, because that's what we did in the play." Anyway. So,
Greg, how important is tourism to the island of Nevis?
it is critical. And that is why we put so much effort into it. We have a few other industries, and we have a good financial industry on Nevis, and also in Saint Kitts, but it doesn't add up anywhere close to what tourism presents for the country. So it is definitely critical for us.
Well, we're sure thrilled to learn more, not only about Nevis, but also about your company, which is called Nevis Sun Tours. And guess what?
Yeah.
Ted Blank can put together any tour, and he is going to do his best to be sure that you see everything. Our listeners, I know, are very excited to learn more about Nevis, and he is happy to have you on the show today to learn really a lot about your country. He speaks very highly of you, Greg, so congratulations with your company and your success. And Ted, if people want to learn more about Nevis or about any of the things we've talked about, how can they do that, please?
Yeah, best way to learn more is to give me a call at area code 651-964-8245, or you can visit my website. It's www.tedblanktravel.com, or you can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/tedblanktravel, and I will put up some pictures from my trip to Nevis this week, so you can see what it looks like in real life, and you can see Mount Nevis and some of the beautiful hotels and lovely restaurants and Alexander Hamilton's birthplace. I'll make sure I put up a picture of that as well.
In my head, you painted such a great picture, Greg. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you. Really appreciate it.
And you are
Glad to be
listening to another edition of The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank, on AM 1460 and FM 97.7 KDWA in Hastings. This travel show has been brought to you by Ted Blank, Luxury Travel and Adventures.